Hey there, this is Brennan. And recently at Create and Sell, I set up a brand new welcome sequence. It's the ultimate thing that I've wanted to set up for a while. And I've had quite a few people since setting it up who have asked me to give kind of like a behind the scenes tour around what I've set up and why I set different things up the way I did. So I wanted to do that in this video. So I've done a lot with segmentation and personalization along with automation. And I think regardless of whether or not you have a welcome sequence in place, or if you don't, I think what I'm about to share might be interesting to you. So hopefully it is. All right. So what I thought I'd start with is just to tell you a bit about what I'm trying to achieve. So what I want to have happen is when somebody joins my email list, I want to initially find out a bit more about them. Specifically, I want to find out what is their current objective when it comes to email marketing. So I run an email marketing newsletter. So I want to find out like what are they currently struggling with? And I have three core options for somebody to choose. And then I also want to find out things like what email provider they use, if anything, and how happy they are with it and things like that. And then what I do from then is I put everyone into a multi-week welcome sequence where I introduce the brand. I tap into a bit about that segmentation data they shared with me around their current goal. And I share how I'm going to specifically help them with that goal. And then after that happens, or I should say, while that's happening, while that multi-week welcome sequence is operational, I'm also putting people onto an Evergreen newsletter. The emails that from me go out on Tuesday. That is going to be the order of these. The emails I send will be dependent on somebody's segmentation. So I know I just covered a lot, but let me walk you through it, and hopefully it'll make a lot of sense what I'm doing and why I'm doing it the way I am. Okay, so when somebody joins my list, I'm just going to simulate this real quick. So video test, blah, 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 blah. So somebody goes to my email list and or my website and opts in. The first thing that's going to happen is they're going to see the pop-up for Upscribe. So I really recommend this. This has been such a huge boon for my email list growth. And here's where I'm recommending other creators. There's more I want to add, but at the minute I've got these two. So I'm going to skip this for now. And then people are then brought to my welcome page. So usually you see a confirmation page that says something like check your email or whatever else. I didn't want to do that because I kind of find those pages to be a bit pointless. I think everyone knows that when you opt into an email list, you should check your email. What I want to do while I've got somebody's attention is to find out a bit more about them. So in this case, what do you use for email marketing? I use ConvertKit. What's your current challenge? So I want to build my audience faster. I want better or more help with automation. I want to sell more to my existing list. I want technical reviews or something else. So I'm going to choose that I want help with automation. And then I ask a few other questions about their experience with, in this case, ConvertKit, and so on and so forth. And since in this case they use ConvertKit, at the end of this welcome survey, I point them to Mastering ConvertKit, which makes sense because if they use ConvertKit, maybe they'd be interested in my course in ConvertKit. Obviously, if they don't use ConvertKit, I'm not going to show that at the end. Okay, so now they're on my list. And now what's really cool is I have a bunch of segmentation information about them. I know what their goal is. I know that they use ConvertKit. I know all the buttons I just showed you that I pressed that relate to how experienced they are with ConvertKit and so on. And all of this works out really well. So this is my Right Message dashboard, which is the tool that I co-founded that is powering what I just showed you. So opt-in rate is huge. It's almost 25%. And I'm getting a lot of data. You can see over the last week, I've collected 400 bits of segmentation data from my audience. So really, really love the data that I'm capturing. I also have a lot of big picture data. About 46% of my audience uses ConvertKit. 16.8% don't use anything yet. So that to me says I need to have more training and more material for people who don't use an email provider just yet. 50.7% of people now want help with building an audience faster. So I have all this great big picture data that lets me make better decisions about the emails I'm going to send and the content I'm going to create and the courses I'm going to create. And how that looks, that survey I just showed you, how it looks in Right Message is like this. So it's nonlinear. So depending on how people answer questions, I go to different follow-up questions, and all of this data is being synced in real time up to my ConvertKit account to their record. So when somebody clicks ConvertKit, that data is sent up to ConvertKit immediately. So even if they close the tab at that point, I still know they use ConvertKit. Okay, so now they're in my ConvertKit database. Now what I do is I have a sequence of emails that is my welcome sequence, that the first email goes out immediately. And then I have a number of emails that follow in the days to come. So the first email is really just to show people that they're at the right place. I talk a bit about kind of the big theme, if you will, of Create and Sell, which is getting off the email hamster wheel and letting people really step away from needing to constantly log into their email platform to nurture and to sell, and to instead position this kind of dark story of which you've seen if you're on my list of what happens if you were unfortunately to go into like a coma, would your business keep humming along? So that's kind of the story, if you will, that I tell. And then a day later, one of three emails are sent. So I'm using in ConvertKit, you can filter out emails in a sequence. So what I'm doing is I'm filtering out people who aren't in a certain segmentation profile. So three emails that go out. One is about automating email marketing. One is about selling more over email. And one is about building your email list growth. So building your audience. So that's the fallback. That's the default, because as I showed you a second ago, half of my list, that's their concern, is building their audience faster. So if you don't tell me anything, or you say audience growth is my priority, that's the email you'll get. Otherwise, you might get something like this email, which is about automation. So my plan for helping you automate your email marketing. Yesterday, I talked about why automation is the ultimate insurance policy, blah, 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 blah. So here's where I get into a really strong argument for why automation is a really good thing. Now, it's not just better for us, but it's also better for our subscribers. And then I come in and I talk about my experience as an automation-focused marketer. So I talk about my story, who I've helped, and so on and so forth. And I do the same depending on what your goal is, but I change the benefits, if you will, or the things I'm saying, depending on how you answered when you joined my email list. And one thing I want to note is when somebody opts in and they see that little survey on the confirmation page, I'm getting about 83% of all people who join completing it. So I get a really high amount of data, but I also have generalized data, which I showed you, this bird's eye view data. So even if you don't answer anything, if you're in that 17% who don't answer, I still have I have an idea of who you might be. So I can make a few assumptions there. And then I just continue with this sequence to do things like, if you don't segment yourself, I ask you to go back and complete that survey. One other nice thing about Right Message is if I link people back to that survey, if they've answered half of the questions, they'll start where they left off. So they won't need to kind of complete it all over again. And then I have emails that go out about things like, hey, what should I write about this week? And this links to a form where this makes sense. This is a week into somebody's relationship with me, where I'm finding out a bit about, hey, if I could dedicate next week, the email I send next week to you, what would I be writing about? And I get so many replies to this. This links really just to a reform here. Let me show it to you real quick, where I asked really just two things. What would you like me to tackle in a future edition? And also more kind of open-ended, where did you hear about the newsletter? Because I'm always curious about that. And then I go down and I have an email that's about, in this case, how to find out, or other ways to connect with me outside of email. So a link to my Twitter, a link to my YouTube channel with one of my favorite videos that I've done. And also the fact that I also do individual coaching and help. So then I link to that. And the other emails I haven't set up yet, but what I'm planning on doing, and this is something I've done with my other brand, Double Your Freelancing, is to have really a multi-month sequence where, like, after a month of being on my list, I'm going to check in and say, hey, like, how am I doing so far? And that's what this email is going to be about. Like, what do you think of what I'm sending you? Is it too in depth? Is it too frequent? Like what should I be doing differently? And then about a month or really 3 weeks after that, I'm then going to get into asking people who at this point have been on my list about a month and a half, 2 months, meaning they've been getting at least 7 or 8 uh, in-depth articles from me. If they want to share even the beginnings of a transformation story. Like, so, hey, you joined my list for X reason. You said you wanted to automate your newsletter better. Remember, I had that data. You told me that back when you joined on X date. I'd love to hear, like, how is it going? Has anything I've been sending you helped you achieve that? And here's going to be a great way for me to, on autopilot, collect not only testimonials and case studies, but also ideas for information that I can send you, hey, Jane shared this with me. She was struggling in this way. Here's what she's been doing. And that's, I know, really inspirational to me and others. So that's kind of the welcome sequence. That is really a long sequence. It will be multiple months long. Fortunately, it's still newish. So the latter 2 emails here are still drafts because no one's hit them yet, but I'm going to be adding them kind of progressively as we go on. Okay, so that's what happens with this welcome sequence. But then I also have it so when you join, you're put onto what I call a shadow newsletter, but you might call it an evergreen newsletter. And this is just something where every Tuesday, I'm going to be sending out an email to you. And these are all broadcast emails I've written to this list over the last year and a half. And I'm doing some interesting things, like, because everyone on my list is in this, I don't want to send you an email you've already received. And unfortunately with ConvertKit, that's kind of tricky to do. So what I've had to do is I've gone through, and I won't get into it in this video, but I've basically created a broadcast email ID for every email I've ever sent. And on everyone's record, I have a list of broadcasts that you've received from me. So then when I send the Evergreen newsletter out, for each of the emails, I can filter them out individually and say, hey, if you've received broadcast 1, 2, 3 already, don't get this email. Don't have it go out. So that's been really helpful. I know a few schools of thought. One big school of thought is like, no one will remember that you've already sent this email like a year ago. But I always find that, again, in a bit of oddly, it just seems wrong to do that. So I wanted to make it so it's clean. So if you've truly been on my list forever, since day one, your automated newsletter is not going to really send anything because you've received everything that I've ever written. But anyway, one thing I'm doing with this is there's a lot of liquidy stuff here that you can ignore. But what this is doing in ConvertKit is it's letting me send it at your local time zone. I think I have it for 11 a.m. And then I have it go down one of 3 paths, which is depending on if you've chosen audience, pitching, or automation as your focus, you'll get a different prioritized queue, if you will, of weekly emails. So what I did for that is I have this Google Doc I put together where here's a list of like every email that I've ever sent to Create and Sell. And what I've tried to do is I've linked to the email in ConvertKit, the broadcast, and come up with an ID for each. The ID is really just the date I sent it. So you'll see here, this is the 25th of August, 2021. And then these icons here mean that I've actually loaded them into the shadow newsletter. Because again, I'm not trying to do the whole thing up front. I'm progressively adding to this shadow or evergreen newsletter. But anyway, what I've done is I've gone through and I've said, okay, these emails make sense if audience growth is your focus. So I prioritize these emails based on what I think the best ones were that I've ever sent. Because I want it so when you first join my list, if you said audience growth is your focus, the first 2-3 months of emails from me, you should be thinking to yourself like, damn, this guy's like sending me incredible stuff on audience growth, which is amazing. Whereas if you said you want help with automation, you're getting more automation type emails. So I've created these different tracks, right? So these different tracks where this is the audience growth tracks, where this correlates to these various bullet lists that I've created. But my thinking here is that somebody joins a list, they go through this welcome sequence that also extends and finds out more about them. What should I write about? Am I helping you? What should I be doing better? Getting success stories, all that good stuff kind of humming along in the background. And then I have my Tuesday automated newsletter that's dialed in on your specific goal that you've shared with me in joining the list. And then on Thursdays, I'm sending new original content, like written that week content, which results in multiple emails going out a week potentially per person. But there should be zero conflicts because I'm never going to send a live email on Tuesdays. So you won't get like two emails from me on a Tuesday. But I'm really happy with this because what it allows me to do is it allows me to not only amplify the amount of value that I'm giving out to especially new subscribers who haven't been on my list for a while, but also to step back a bit because there's a lot of things I'm working on specifically with the Create and Sell Pro platform that I'm hoping to launch this summer that I just need time and deep work to be able to get that done. And this allows me to spend less time logging into ConvertKit and doing stuff and more time on that. So I'm really happy with how this is shaped up. I really, again, if you have a welcome sequence of some sort, good on you. If you don't, I would create one. This should definitely, show somebody that they're at the right place. So, if you have a list like me on email marketing, show them how you're going to help them, what you're going to cover, and things like that, and really set an expectation of what somebody can expect from being on your list. But if you want to really geek out on things, having that bridge into then an automated newsletter, ideally if it's curated in such a way where it changes the order of what you send, depending on somebody's goals, which obviously then requires you to segment new subscribers. I just highly recommend doing all of that. So all of this and more, I'm going to be obviously teaching more in depth with Create and Sell Pro. It's already a lot of it in Mastering ConvertKit, but it's going to be evolving into this new Pro platform. But yeah, hopefully just seeing this kind of behind the scenes tour of what I've done is super helpful. And like always, if you have any questions or have any comments or think that I should be doing this instead of that, definitely reach out. I love hearing from you all. All right, well, that's it for me, and I'll talk to you soon.